Hello and welcome. You're tuned in to Arirang TV's continued special coverage of the 2018 Inter-Korean Summit, Pyeongyang. Two summit talks between the leaders of the two Koreas wrapped up with a joint declaration announced earlier today. President Moon's trip isn't done yet, though. I'm Daniel Chen. Joining me in the studio is Dr. James Kim from the Asan Institute for Policy Studies. On my right, thank you for making time for us again.
Thank you.
And on my left is our political correspondent, Kim Min-ji, to provide us some insights and various details about everything that's going on and the latest footage coming from North Korea.
Thanks for having me.
Well, this was not on the initial schedule for President Moon Jae-in's trip to Pyongyang, but it's decided today he will be visiting Pusan Mountain with his North Korean counterpart tomorrow. Sabo Bin fills us in on the significance of this mountain.
Korean President Moon Jae-in and North Korean leader Kim Jongun have decided to visit Pusan Mountain together tomorrow. During their April summit in Panmunjom, President Moon mentioned that he really wanted to visit Pusan Mountain and that he wants to visit the mountain and see its crater lake, Lake Cheonji, from the Korean side and not the Chinese side. He repeated his wish when he arrived in North Korea earlier this week. With a height of 2,744 meters, Pusan Mountain is the highest mountain on the Korean peninsula in northeast China. It's bordered by Hamgyongdo province in North Korea and Jilin province in northeast China. It's had several different names since ancient times. The modern Korean name Pusan Mountain, meaning Whitehead Mountain, was first recorded over 1,300 years ago. Around that time, it was also called Taebaeksan Mountain, meaning Great White Mountain. Its crater lake at the top of the mountain, which is called Heaven Lake, or Lake Cheonji in Korean, is one of the highest crater lakes in the world. A lot of international visitors, including many South Korean visitors, climb the mountain from the Chinese side. It is also a very popular tourist destination for visitors to North Korea as well. In the Inter-Korean Summit Agreement in 2007, the South and North agreed to implement tours of Pusan Mountain and even establish a direct Pusan Mountain Seoul air route. 서보빈, Arirang News.
And now let's connect to our Cheongwon correspondent Hwang Ho-jun. Ho-jun, we do hear that President Moon Jae-in and Kim Jong-un, the North Korean leader, will be visiting Mount Pusan together tomorrow. What do you have for us at this point?
Well, Daniel, if we said before that there aren't that many factors that would surprise us reporters here at this Seoul Media Press Center during the third Inter-Korean Summit this year, well, the Blue House spokesperson Kim Il-kyung's abrupt announcement this afternoon about President Moon's itinerary tomorrow, well, that proved us wrong. Take a listen.
President Moon Jae-in and Chairman Kim Jong-un will visit Pusan Mountain together tomorrow. Chairman Kim suggested a visit, which President Moon accepted.
The announcement elicited probably the loudest exclamations from the reporters here at the Seoul Media Press Center. According to poll reports on the Q&A the spokesperson had in Pyongyang soon after the announcement, the two leaders will head to the southern summit of Pusan via a cable car, and if weather permits, they will also head down to Cheonji, the crater lake on top of the mountain. The First Ladies, the South Korean delegation, and the pool reporters are also expected to accompany the two leaders, and they will all return back to Seoul from the Samjiyon airport, the closest airport from the mountain. Tomorrow's visit to Pusan Mountain will be the dream come true for President Moon. I'll remind you, the South Korean president said to his North Korean counterpart in April during the first Inter-Korean Summit that he wishes to visit the mountain from the North Korean side and that he hopes Kim Jong-un would make his wish become a reality. He reiterated his dream of climbing the mountain as soon as he arrived in Pyongyang while still on the plane as well.
Well, Ho-jun, definitely something to look forward to tomorrow for everyone here watching as well. So let's talk about the declaration that was signed between the two leaders earlier today a little bit. Senior Presidential Press Secretary Yoon Young-chan gave a recap of the agreements earlier in the afternoon.
Correct. He underscored the Pyongyang Declaration, talks about the denuclearization of the Korean Peninsula, improving the inter-Korean relations, and also de-escalating military tensions. He stressed that Pyongyang expressed its willingness to destroy the Yongbyon nuclear site, calling it North Korea's practical determination for denuclearization that would end the era of war and open a new era of peace and co-prosperity. This was probably aimed at the U.S. government, which has raised concerns about North Korea's willingness to actually follow through the denuclearization process. The U.S. has demanded Pyongyang prove its commitment, such as providing a list of its nuclear facilities. North Korea, in return, demanded that an official declaration ending the Korean War must come first. The conflict led to the sudden cancellation of U.S. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo's planned visit to Pyongyang in August. Yoon said President Moon will brief his U.S. counterpart, President Trump, on the sidelines of the UN General Assembly next week on both the disclosed and confidential results. That is set to take place next Monday. And finally, regarding North Korean leader Kim Jong-un's promise to visit Seoul by the end of this year, Yoon was wary about jumping to any conclusions, such as an official declaration to end the Korean War then. But he said the fact of a North Korean leader physically visiting the South Korean capital holds great significance for inter-Korean relations and the security landscape of East Asia. Now, just to give you some updates from the additional footages coming in, the two leaders and their wives attended a luncheon at the Ongryeo restaurant, famous for its Pyongyang cold noodles. And while no confirmation has been made yet, President Moon should have had dinner by now. He was scheduled to eat at a local restaurant called Taedonggang Seafood restaurant where Pyongyang residents are known to commonly dine. The South Korean president is also scheduled to watch North Korea's signature mass game, quote, Brilliant Fatherland, where we can expect President Moon to give a short speech, which will also be, it will likely be broadcasted live. Daniel?
Right, Ho-jun, thank you for those updates, and we'll be waiting for the footage from North Korea to come in regarding President Moon Jae-in's attendance at the mass games, as Ho-jun mentioned, titled Brilliant Fatherland. Now let's take a closer look into the agreements the leaders of South Korea and North Korea have signed and announced at the Pyeongyang summit. Our Park Hee-jun explains in detail what progress was made on the denuclearization front.
South and North Korea have agreed to achieve a nuclear-free Korean peninsula.
조선 반도를 핵무기도 핵 위협도 없는 평화의 땅으로 만들기 위해 적극 노력해 나가기로 확약하였습니다.
And that agreement comes with some concrete measures.
북측은 동창리 엔진 시험장과 미사일 발사대를 유관국의 전문가들의 참여하에 영구적으로 폐쇄하기로 했습니다. 또한 미국의 상응 조치에 따라 영변 핵시설의 영구 폐기와 같은 추가적 조치도 취해 나가기로 했습니다.
It's the first time for the nuclear issue to even be discussed as an official agenda at the Inter-Korean Summit, let alone for detailed measures to come out of the talks. President Moon credited Kim for keeping his promises made with U.S. President Donald Trump at the first ever North Korea-U.S. summit in Singapore. The promises being no more nuclear or missile tests. The South Korean president also called for progress in North Korea-U.S. negotiations, particularly by continuing to exchange letters. The two Koreas will continue cooperating closely with the U.S. and the rest of the international community to achieve the common goal of denuclearization. And with that, he says the two Koreas are not far from reaching their final destination of building peace on the peninsula that's without nuclear weapons or nuclear threats. Park Hee-jun, Arirang News.
Staying with discussions on further steps to denuclearize, included is the shutdown of another nuclear test site up north. Cha Sang-mi shares with us some experts' views on the agreement.
The denuclearization talks are back on the track. At Wednesday's joint press conference, President Moon said the two sides have agreed on the next steps. President Moon called the North's promise to permanently close the Dongchangri engine testing and missile launch site a very meaningful outcome and said the permanent denuclearization of the Korean peninsula will be achieved before long. The Yongbyon complex is the North's most important nuclear facility, so getting rid of it would be a meaningful step indeed. Among those keeping close tabs on these developments is Professor Song Se-ryun, who says that progress on denuclearization could open the door to another summit between North Korea and the U.S. But he also said President Moon might have expected something more out of the Pyongyang declaration.
I think he suggested that not only the facility dismantling, but also the big piece on the inspection side. Because if you don't know how many weapons they have, we cannot talk about how to eliminate it or even reduce it. So at that point, on that point, if we're talking about the dismantling of facilities without even the concrete schedule to do so, probably is a letdown for a lot of people.
Other experts like writer Tim Shorrock say the U.S. might not see this as a positive development. They'll want something more concrete before another meeting.
Well, I think the biggest problem is that the United States wants North Korea to basically surrender its nuclear weapons first, and then move toward a peace regime and getting a peace treaty and that kind of thing. And I think that North Korea is not going to surrender its weapons without some kind of real security, not just a guarantee, but its future where it's not under where it feels under attack by the United States.
Shorok said key steps by both North Korea and the U.S. are needed to improve their communications, perhaps by opening up embassies or liaison offices in Pyongyang and Washington. 차상미, Arirang News.
The defense chiefs of the two Koreas also signed a comprehensive military agreement. It's looked to help significantly reduce tensions and build trust. Park Ji-won outlines what they are.
South Korea's Minister of National Defense Song Young-moo and his North Korean counterpart No Kwang-chol signed a comprehensive military agreement Wednesday with South Korean President Moon Jae-in and North Korean leader Kim Jong-un present at the scene. The military agreement states various specific details to realize the goal of ceasing hostile acts against each other and building mutual trust. First, both sides agreed to cease military exercises along the military demarcation line from November 1st this year. Specifically, all live-fire artillery drills and field training exercises at the regiment level and above will be ceased within 5 kilometers of the MDL. Both sides also agreed to designate no-fly zones for all aircraft above the MDL area from November 1st. Also aiming to prevent any accidental military clashes on land, air, or sea, the two Koreas agreed on specific step-by-step procedures and aimed to solve all military issues through peaceful consultations and maintaining permanent communication channels. Secondly, South and North Korea agreed on specific measures to transform the DMZ area into a peace zone. The two sides agreed to remove 11 guard posts each, altogether 22 located within 1 kilometer of each other by the end of this year as a preliminary measure to eventually removing all guard posts within the DMZ. They also agreed to demilitarize the joint security area, and the South, the North, and the United Nations Command will remove all mines in the JSA in Panmunjom within 20 days starting October 1st. The two sides also said they will jointly recover war remains within the DMZ as a pilot program, with those operations taking place from April to October next year. Thirdly, South and North Korea agreed to turn the area around the northern lemon line and the West Sea, a de facto maritime border, into a peace zone to avoid accidental clashes. The two sides will also establish a joint fishing zone in the area as a pilot program. Lastly, the two Koreas agreed to continue consultations on various military issues for mutual military confidence building. Wednesday's comprehensive agreement came after a series of military talks between generals and colonels of the two Koreas over the past months to realize the historic Panmunjom Declaration, where the two Koreas agreed to cease all hostile acts against each other and reduce military tensions. Park Ji-won, Arirang News.
Another key agreement outlined in the joint declaration is economic cooperation. Of course, they will first need relief from sanctions. Kim Hyesung explains further what the two sides plan to prepare until that time comes.
The two Koreas have agreed to boost economic exchanges on the basis of co-prosperity and take substantive measures to develop the economy. First, the two leaders agreed to hold a groundbreaking ceremony linking rail and roads along the east and west coast within this year and discuss the possibility of creating special economic and tourism zones along the coasts. Already, the two Koreas have conducted joint inspections on the railroads in July, as outlined in the Panmunjom Declaration last April. Second, there are plans to reopen the Kaesong Industrial Complex, a symbol of cross-border economic cooperation, which opened in 2004 but has been shut down since 2016 amid heightened tensions on the Korean peninsula following North Korea's nuclear test.
환경이 조성되는 대로 개성공단과 금강산 관광 사업의 정상화도 이루어질 것입니다.
When conditions are ready, as economic ventures or investment in the North would require the lifting of UN sanctions on North Korea. In addition, the two Koreas have agreed to push for cooperation in environmental protection like forestry restoration and healthcare and medical services. Kim Hae-sung, Arirang News.
As part of the Pyongyang agreement, the two Koreas will intensify cross-border exchanges in culture and sports. They will also work together to solve the fundamental issue of separated families. Won Jung-hwan files us this report.
The summit agreement will lead to further humanitarian cooperation in the near future, highlighting the objective of solving the fundamental issue of separated families. The two leaders said that they will cooperate on the humanitarian front, allowing their people to hold video-based reunions and exchange video messages with their families separated by the Korean War some 60 years ago. Also, as the elderly survivors are approaching the twilight of their lives, the two have put their heads together to resolve lingering issues as soon as possible by opening a reunion center for separated families in the Mount Kumgang area and restoring the visiting facilities. The two Koreas have also decided to actively forge stronger inter-Korean exchanges in various fields in order to heighten the atmosphere of reconciliation and unity on the Korean peninsula. Following the latest performance by North Korean artists in February during the 2018 Pyeongchang Winter Olympics in Seoul, they once again agreed to further promote cultural and artistic exchanges by holding another art performance by the Pyongyang Art Troupe in Seoul next month. The two have also agreed to hold events to commemorate the 11th anniversary of the October 4th Declaration and to celebrate the 100th anniversary of the March 1st independence movement together. On the sporting front, the two leaders agreed to cooperate in major sports events such as the upcoming 2020 Tokyo Olympics, and also announced that they will make a bid to the IOC to co-host the 2032 Summer Olympics. Won Jung-hwan, Arirang News.
The news of what was discussed in Pyongyang was not only of interest to Koreans, it received attention from all across the world. Our Hong Yu zooms in on how the global media covered the joint agreement.
The world's media were all interested in what the leaders of the two Koreas had to say. Soon after the leaders announced the details of their agreement, U.S. President Donald Trump tweeted about their announcement. He said that Kim Jong-un has agreed to allow nuclear inspections subject to final negotiations and to permanently dismantle a test site and launch pad in the presence of international experts. In the meantime, there will be no rocket or nuclear testing. Hero remains to continue being returned home to the United States. Also, North and South Korea will file a joint bid to host the 2032 Olympics. Very exciting. British newspaper The Guardian reported that North Korea had agreed to shut down its missile test sites. It emphasized that Moon Jae-in said the two leaders have agreed to steps that will lead to a nuclear-free peninsula. Japanese newspaper Asahi Shimbun also focused its report on North Korea agreeing to invite foreign experts to verify its permanent scrapping of its missile sites. It also highlighted the importance of this summit, saying, more than in their previous encounters, when the mere fact of meeting and resuming a dialogue was seen as a major step forward, Moon is under pressure to leave Thursday with some concrete accomplishments. CNN reported that South and North Korea have committed to an era of no war, taking a step closer to peace by signing a joint military agreement that removes the threat of conflict on the peninsula. The joint military agreement was signed right after the Pyongyang joint agreement. Most foreign media highlighted the fact that North Korea has agreed to shut down its missile test sites, since progress towards denuclearizing North Korea is what the rest of the world is most interested in. Hong Yu, Arirang News.
The leaders of South Korea's rival parties were also part of President Moon's entourage. Today, a meeting was held with their North Korean counterparts. It was supposed to happen yesterday. During the talks, ruling party chairman Lee Hae-chan proposed concrete steps to improve cooperation between the legislative bodies of the two sides, including an inter-Korean parliamentary meeting. Kim Bo-kyun has more on what was discussed.
At a meeting with representatives from North Korea's legislative body on Wednesday, South Korea's ruling party chief proposed holding an inter-Korean parliamentary meeting within this year. Speaking to reporters ahead of a meeting, Lee Hae-chan, the chair of the ruling Democratic Party of Korea, spoke of cooperative proposals he plans to bring up during the talks.
We will ask the North's representatives for their opinion on holding an inter-Korean parliamentary meeting before this year ends. National Assembly Speaker Moon Hee-sang already sent a letter about the proposal.
He also spoke of plans to discuss ways to hold a joint celebratory event next year to mark the centennial anniversary of the March 1st independence movement. The meeting was attended by the chiefs of Seoul's fellow liberal parties, Chung Dong-young of the Party for Democracy and Peace and Lee Jung-mi of the Justice Party, and three counterparts from the north side, including Kim Young-nam, the president of the Presidium of the Supreme People's Assembly. The talks kicked off at 10 a.m., and before the meeting moved to a closed-door setting, the ruling party chief expressed a strong will to improve ties between the two sides.
Now that South Korea is run by a liberal administration, I'm looking forward to great opportunities just like today's. I came here with the stern resolve to make an everlasting, solid inter-Korean relationship.
Kim Young-nam welcomed Lee's statement, also expressing his will for reunification.
Let's continue boldly moving towards unification. Let's be courageous and valiant and together accomplish the common wish of the Korean people.
The meeting between the heads of the legislative bodies of the two sides came a day after its original schedule, as it has been cancelled due to the absence of South Korean delegates. Speculations have been raised after the sudden cancellation, but the ruling party chief Lee explained on Wednesday that there was a miscommunication in adjusting the meeting schedule. Kim Mo-kyun, Arirang News.
North Korea's state media also covered the first day of the summit. They didn't carry it live, but broadcast scenes from that day was shown to its viewers a day later. Han So-ah has the full story.
Korean Central Television reported on the first day of the Inter-Korean Summit in Pyongyang, a day after the fact, on the afternoon of September 19th. KCTV showed a diverse range of scenes of President Moon Jae-in's visit to Pyongyang, including Kim Jong-un greeting him at the airport and their motorcade procession through the city. It then showed Moon and Kim's activities in detail, including President Moon and First Lady Kim Jong-suk's visit to the Baekhawan State Guest House, the dinner they attended at Mongran House, and an art performance by North Korea's Samjiyeon Orchestra and singers. The two leaders' speeches and Chairman Kim's welcoming toast at the dinner were also broadcast. This morning, the Korean Central News Agency also reported on the summit. In addition to the summit talks themselves, it carried a massive report in the form of 7 articles on the details of President Moon's first day there. Han So-ah, Arirang News.
Upon his arrival in Pyongyang, President Moon Jae-in bowed to the North Korean citizens gathered to welcome him, a gesture by a person of such stature likely took many of them by surprise. Noah Ram tells us more.
As President Moon walked down a red carpet laid in front of the crowd, he showed his gratitude for the welcome with a deep bow. Although this is common courtesy in South Korea, for North Koreans, a deep bow is only reserved as a sign of utmost respect for someone in a position of authority. Moon's interaction with the crowd did not stop there. In contrast to Kim Jong-un's wave of the hand, the South Korean president approached the citizens and shook hands with several people in the front row. North Koreans could be taken aback by this, as it would be unthinkable for them to receive a bow, let alone come into contact with a world leader. It would be even more unimaginable if it was the North Korean leader, who is a deified figure. Pyongyang state media aired a program a few years ago on the basic mannerisms that North Koreans should follow. It says a deep bow of nearly 90 degrees, which President Moon displayed, is only to be used for the North Korean leader and his family. Political experts say Moon's modest demeanor could have a more powerful and lasting effect in changing the North Korean public's perspective of the South than millions of propaganda leaflets. Noah Ram, Arirang News.
We're going to turn to an expert standing by over in Italy to share her insights with us. Let's connect to Maria Rosario, North Korea analyst for NK News. Thank you so much for making time for us.
Hi, thank you for having me. It's a pleasure.
Well, the statement made by the two leaders, what kind of agreements were you hoping to see, and would you say you're satisfied with the outcome today?
To be honest, I have to say that I'm very satisfied with this agreement. And I think that this second day of summit has had a very good outcome because it has created the right mood for next step to be taken. And it has shown that Kim Jong-un is really committed to work on the improvement of inter-Korea relations and on denuclearization. And in this, Moon Jae-in has played a big role. And I think that Kim Jong-un has been very frank and humble in his discussion with Moon Jae-in. And again, as it happened during their first meeting in April, Kim Jong-un has clearly said that economically North Korea lags still behind South Korea, so a lot has to be done. And I think that apart from the denuclearization measures, the agreement touches upon very important issues for the improvement of inter-Korean relations. First of all, like the restarting of joint inter-Korean cooperation to develop the national economy. For example, by restarting cooperation at the Kaesong Industrial Complex or at the Mount Kumgam Tourism Resort. And I think that very important are also the measures to strengthen the humanitarian cooperation between two Koreas to solve the issues of separated families, because the two Koreas have agreed to open a permanent reunion center and to have regular phone calls and letter exchanges between the members of the separate families. They also agreed on medical cooperation, environmental cooperation, and also to have a ceremony linking railroads between the east and west coast of Korean Peninsula within this year. And they also agreed on filed a bid to co-host the Summer Olympic in 2032. So I think that we have to appreciate this agreement because it represents an important step in the right direction. And also Kim Jong-un is showing to the world that is kind of normal leader of a normal country. So I think that we have to be positive about this summit so far.
Right, changing perceptions of the rest of the world. Now, the denuclearization and reducing military tensions were some of the core agendas for the summit. What do you think of the results on these fronts?
I also think that in this field we have to be positive because if I refer to the agreement between signed by Moon Jae-in and Kim Jong-un, we can find two important concrete measures towards denuclearization that are North Korea agreed to close a missile and testing site under the watch of international observers, and this is what the international community has been asking in the last years to North Korea. And there is also the possibility to permanent dismantlement of the Yongbyon nuclear facilities, and this is also very important. So I think that again, Kim Jong-un is trying to show to the world that he is serious about his intentions, and now he will wait for the United States to reciprocate those actions. And about the military agreement signed by the South Korea defense minister and his North Korean counterpart, I also think that is very important because we can find some military tension reduction measures, like to set up maritime, air, and ground buffer zones in front line to decrease tensions. They agreed to halt military drills near the military demarcation line, to withdraw some border coast guard, and to disarm the joint security area at DMZ. And also I think it's also positive the idea to establish a joint military committee that has to check on the enforcement of this measure. So I think that military confidence building measures are very needed to decrease tensions and to work for make the Korean Peninsula a safer place than now without war. And I think that two Koreas with this agreement have agreed to cease all the hostile acts between each other, and to preclude the use of force, to avoid the use of force in any circumstances. And also I think that the establishment of military communication day by day, they can communicate, is very important because this can help in avoid the risk of miscalculation or misunderstanding that can easily lead to war. So I think that we have to consider also this agreement as a big step. And I also know that maybe someone will say, we have already seen this in the past, but I think that in this new framework between the North and South Korea is very important, and we have to be, again, positive.
Right. We are sure many people who are watching are with you in terms of viewing the summit in a very positive light. Well, thank you, Maria Rosario from NK News. Thank you so much for your time and sharing with us your insights. We appreciate it.
Thank you very much.
Now back here in the studio, we have Dr. Lu Jong Hyun from the Sejong Institute, a research fellow there, joining us in the studio on my right. Thank you so much for swooping in at the last minute, Doctor.
Thanks for having me.
And of course, on my left is Kim Min-ji, our political correspondent. And Min-ji, I believe you are waiting for some exciting footage to come in from North Korea. Could you give us a brief preview of what we can expect?
That's right. We are expecting to get footage of the mass gymnastics performance from North Korea. It's called the Brilliant Fatherland, which will be held at the Neungna-do Mayday Stadium. Now, it's considered a little bit controversial, given that they've been using it to promote the socialist regime. The event is mostly aimed at promoting the North's leaders and the socialist system, so it's being regarded as a major propaganda tool. Now, earlier in the day, the presidential office said that the title of the performance could be changed and the content will be edited a little bit so that it doesn't disturb the South Korean delegation. Now, here, South Korean President Moon Jae-in will deliver a speech to some 150,000 people that's expected to gather here, and where the performance will be staged.
And before that, of course, they dined, and I believe they are done with their meal, and they're probably standing by for this exciting show to begin. And what we're getting is some clips of North Korean leader Kim Jongun and South Korean President Moon Jae-in gathering for a meal, and I believe we had a footage from there, but now we're focusing on a tree which has been planted by the two leaders, I believe, right?
Yes, that's right. Previously, in the April Panmunjom summit, we also had a tree planting ceremony. They had one today. It was held at 2:30, and it was attended by the first couple of South Korea. They actually planted a Mogangju tree, which is translated into golden rain or a Chinese bladder nut, and the name is given because of the golden leaves, and it means prosperity. Here, the North Korean officials that attended said that given the special meaning of the tree, that they decided to use it. It says with the autumn breeze, it leads to the abundant harvest of grains and fruit, and they wish that this year is also like a lump of gold and that it's the first phase of unification.
Unlike the initial ceremony they held, which is becoming protocol routine from what they'd had in South Korean side of the Panmunjom, this time North Korean leader Kim Jongun is not present at the event.
Yes, he was not present at the event.
That will be Choi Ryong-hae?
Yes, Choi Ryong-hae instead. So this was held at the place where President Moon Jae-in was staying. Now that is the state guest house, the Baekhawan State Guest House. So after lunch, he went there, and we can see the stone. It reads that they're celebrating President Moon Jae-in's visit to North Korea. And Choi Ryong-hae is a member of the Presidium of the Political Bureau, and he's also the Vice Chairman of the State Affairs Commission of North Korea.
Right, North Korea is a powerful Workers' Party, a member of that as well. And yeah, it seems like the weather is favorable, and they are no strangers to each other, I believe, Choi Ryong-hae and President Moon Jae-in.
Yes, that's right. So they had a similar ceremony back in April 27th when the summit was held in Panmunjom. So here it was attended by government officials as well. We can see President Moon Jae-in and Choi Ryong-hae putting water on the tree.
Soil followed by water, and of course, and the rest is up to Mother Nature. and it will be a symbolic element to the thaw in relations, and possibly lead up to an even better cooperation and joint projects and collaboration and peaceful mood in the peninsula, which is long overdue. Dr. Wu, perhaps you would like to join us and perhaps fill us in on the significance of these little gestures. Some might see it as something trivial or just casual, but they will add up to something more substantial in the long run in terms of building a strong relationship between the two Koreas.
So, you know that everything cannot be done overnight.
Right.
And this kind of small gestures build up to the eventual peace ultimately. That's our hope. So maybe these are tree planting ceremonies and eating together and watching the performance together. It might be look small matters, but eventually keeping these things repeated may lead us to have these kind of things more granted, natural. So I think that these kind of measures can be our way to the eventual peace on the Korean Peninsula.
Right, little by little, it's the thaw in relationship, it just doesn't happen overnight. We have a big, strong start, but then we have to build up from the little things as well, like familiarity, greetings, exchanging looks, and exchanging small talks, which is what the two leaders seem to do very well in here as well. They do seem a little bit more tense compared to their previous summits. We're seeing them from, I believe this is Ongnyugan, the restaurant, that they sat down for naengmyeon, which is one of President Moon Jae-in's favorite dish.
That's right. This is where they had their luncheon. So we see footage showing President Moon Jae-in and North Korean leader Kim Jongun. Now they had naengmyeon here, Pyeongyang naengmyeon, so it's cold noodles. They actually had naengmyeon from Ongnyugan back in the April summit. North Korean leader brought it over.
Delivered it, not just a freshly made bowl, but rather the elements or tools needed, including the noodle maker and also a chef from Ongnyugan to make sure it is prepared on the spot. It was quite an impressive gesture. And here, this time, in this visit, there hasn't been that many outstanding or interesting sights like the two leaders crisscrossing, crossing back and forth and holding hands or sitting down for impromptu talks. Things have been proceeding rather as scheduled instead of improvisational changes last minute, except of course we do have the Pusan Mountain hike, which is planned. That was arranged pretty last minute, and I believe initially North Korean leader Kim Jongun did suggest the idea, suggest the notion of hiking, but back then it was not from the North Korean side, and now they can do that, and President Moon Jae-in was quick to jump on that offer.
Yeah, Blue House spokesperson today announced that two leaders are going to hike on the Pusan Mountain tomorrow morning, and there was, but he didn't specify when that proposal was offered from the North Korean side. However, I think it might be a great opportunity for us to see that two leaders share their thoughts, and also Pusan Mountain has been a special meaning to Koreans because our national anthem includes the word Pusan Mountain. However, the thing that concerned me is that since the division of two Koreas, Pusan Mountain has very different meaning in North Korea, which is very related to the Kim family. So that's why they always call the Kim family as a Pusan bloodline. So probably there's a chance that North Korea is going to take advantage of our president's visit there as their propaganda. So I think our government is going to take good care of those kind of issues.
The importance is that they are aware of such variables, how I guess perception could be altered depending on how North Korea shapes the opinions, or rather how this trip is framed.
Right. So today, even though North Korea, we want to believe that North Korea is not doing this out of their malicious intentions, but visiting of Mansudae factory, which is sanctioned by the United Nations. And also, we just discussed that they are going to watch the mass games that has been used for the North Korea's propaganda. And now we are going to go to Baekdu Mountain, which might have a different meaning than what we thought of Baekdu Mountain in the history. So other than that, it might be a great opportunity for two leaders to build much more closer relations than before, so they can pursue a brighter future on the Korean Peninsula. And we still have so many things to go on. So I think it is very important that two leaders build more stronger bond out of these events.
All right, hiking a mountain together, that's one way to certainly forge a strong bond. And in terms of the Baekdu Mountain, I remember back in the days when I was still in school, there were videos of the footage from the mountain that was being sold everywhere. And every one of my parents' families, and including my parents, had that VHS tape, watching it over and over again, reminding us of the significance and the important symbol this mountain has for Korea, not just the two Koreas, but the Korean Peninsula.
Yeah, President Moon Jae-in is known to favor the hikings, and there's a lot of chances offered to him that he could go up to the Baekdu Mountain from the route from the China side. But I heard that he has refused to use the China side to go up to the Baekdu Mountain until he can go up to the mountain from the Korean Peninsula. So I think North Korean leader Kim Jong-un knew that kind of stories, and that's why he offered this travel to the Baekdu Mountain tomorrow to our president.
Right. Right now, as you mentioned, there seems to be, depending on how you look at it, some genuine willingness to change or show the world that it's different. It's not what they make North Korea out to be, that it is a normal state. Do you feel that this is something that's working right now from the international stage, from the outside looking in?
So certainly there's going to be some changes with respect to how worlds are going to view North Korea if they kept this kind of events with South Korea and other countries and not committing any more provocations. And so still it's not easy to call North Korea as a normal state because they have totally different political system.
Very unique system there.
And
yes.
also they have worse record of human rights. So until they resolve that kind of issues, it's going to be difficult for them to be recognized as normal state in the international arena. But South Korean government puts much effort to push North Korea in the direction of to be considered as a normal state by having this kind of events over and over. So I think that if we keep doing this, then over time, I think, as you mentioned, that North Korea will have a chance to be considered as a true normal state.
Right, erasing some of the deeds done in the past or the decisions made by the current North Korean leader Kim Jong-un. As long as we keep this momentum up for a little bit longer, a few more years longer, perhaps it will be able to eradicate the bad taste left in the mouths of those people who are affected by certain provocations or misdemeanors by North Korea.
Right, that's correct. So that is why we have to see the summit today is not the final destination of the relations. This is only the part of the process. So even though there are some things that are fully satisfying our expectations before the summit, but we should follow up and we should continue on the efforts of doing this kind of events in the future.
So, all in all, have we taken a solid step towards solidifying our position in the peace process in the peninsula with the latest talks so that they can see that we can work things out together?
So I think that today's summit, there are a lot of things that still has to be discussed between two Koreas. For example, that two Koreas have agreed to produce this military agreement. But one of the important things to manage the military relations between the Koreas, they decide to establish a joint military committee. Actually, it was discussed in 1971. And they have designated exact date to have the joint military committee, but it was not successful. So that shows how difficult it is between two Koreas to resolve the issues around the military. So I guess that this is not the final product that we are going to see between two Koreas. So this is, I think, merely a first step for improving the military relations between two Koreas. And they are going to have a series of talks in the future to fill in the blanks in all those parts in the military agreement today.
As for the lawmakers visiting the north with the president, other than the hiccup they had in terms of standing one of their North Korean counterparts up, how do you perceive something fruitful coming out from here? Is it also just a first step towards the first button, you might add?
So the National Assembly in North Korea has totally different meanings. So the representatives in our National Assembly is representing the people in their district, but North Korea's National Assembly has totally different meanings. So it's a two different system because North Korea is not a democratic system like we are. But even though we don't have same meaning in the National Assembly in North Korea, but having this kind of relations in all aspects of society will eventually lead to the much better close relations between the Koreas. So I think that as you mentioned, that there's some problem yesterday about the meeting with our congressman and the North Korean officials.
It's the first inter-Korean accident that has happened in a long while.
Yeah, but I hope that they can overcome that kind of small matters, and I think they are probably going to have another meeting between national parliaments of North Korea and South Korea.
Right. Going back to that, Minji, how do you perceive the progress that's made in terms of the lawmakers' exchanges in North Korea?
Well, initially, President Moon had invited the chairs of all major parties to attend the summit with him, to accompany him to the summit talks. And here they were supposed to deliver a letter on behalf of South Korea's National Assembly Speaker in order to hold parliamentary level talks. Now, like the professor said, it's not the same, it's not the equivalent of our assembly, but because things like the Panmunjom Declaration needs ratification in the Assembly to proceed with the projects that they're planning to pursue. What many experts or lawmakers have said is parliamentary cooperation is necessary in order to get legislative affairs in the terms of North Korea moving.
Right, what we're seeing here is a meeting between some of the lawmakers greeting their North Korean the man who is greeting the South Korean visitors there. I believe that is Kim Young-chul, if I'm correct me if I'm wrong.
Kim Young-nam. He's a ceremonial leader.
Right, the ceremonial leader.
Yeah, so he is the president of the Presidium of the Supreme People's Assembly, and with him is
the nominal head of state. He has seen a lot of South Korean officials and delegates over the years, and certainly has a lot of wisdom to share in terms of his experience, having noticed the ups and downs in inter-Korean relations and talks.
That's right. So along with the president are Lee Hae-chan of the ruling Democratic Party of Korea and the chairs of two minor liberal parties as well. So they held a meeting today with Kim Young-nam, as we just saw, the ceremonial head of state. And here the ruling party chair expressed optimism about better inter-Korean ties that's taking place now, and that they're seeking more engagement with North Korea because we have the liberal government in place after 9 years of conservative rule.
Right, a lot of photo ops and a lot of exchanges there, lots of smiles, and possibly the initial stage towards greater exchanges. In the past, we've had incidents between the two Koreas because of lack of communication. We've had a lot of ways and efforts on both sides to try and open up the communication channel, including the most recently setting up a joint liaison office.
That's right. So today in the the Pyeongyang agreement, they also agreed to step up cooperation on this part as well. They're going to step up humanitarian cooperation to fundamentally resolve the issue of separated families as well by opening a reunion center for separated families in the Kumgang area and to restore the visiting facilities as well. And also what they agreed upon was further promoting cultural and artistic exchanges, and also they're going to make efforts to co-host the 2032 Summer Olympics.
Right. Other than the cultural performances that the South Korean delegates will be watching, I believe the South Korean side also has something to offer to the North Korean counterparts or the people in North Korea. We did have a musical delegation, or rather celebrities or performers joining the president, and even a composer there. They've had some special program prepared for the North Korean citizens and the officials they were going to meet across the border.
Yes, so accompanying the president as well was cultural figures. We've seen multiple footage showing South Korean artists, which includes rapper Jiko and singer Ailey. So they were also in the north, and they attended itineraries that's related to music. And they were also at the musical performance that we saw in the footage yesterday.
Right, dressed more, I guess, less casual than normal, and a little bit more calmed down in terms of their hairstyles and their outfits. They did not really stick out from the crowd there. Dr. Lu, in terms of cultural exchanges, how important is it, since it did help lay the foundation for the current state of inter-Korean ties, and we do have more cultural exchanges planned, another performance by North Korean artists in Seoul?
So I think like cultural exchange can lead to the more integration among people, because of it might be easier in the future than when two society achieve the unification. Like political system and legal system can be much easier to be integrated. But however, as we all know that we have experienced that social issues when our Korean Chinese moved to South Korea to have a job. They felt a lot of difficulties when they first moved in. So I think the same thing can be applied to the North Korean people now in the northern territory of Korean Peninsula, because we have divided more than 60 years, and we barely have communications, and we barely have cultural exchanges, and even we sometimes we don't understand their languages even though they speak Korean. So I think that this kind of small steps in cultural exchanges will help in the future for the integration of the society between the Koreas.
In terms of military tension easing measures, we talked about setting up a special zone between the two Koreas. There's a lot of history there, I believe. There are a lot of cultural relics, and there are a lot of remains of fallen soldiers. There are also areas that overlap in terms of some of the fiercest battles fought during the Korean War. So it was left alone, and there's a lot of untouched natural wonders there as well. Do you see this playing an important part in terms of boosting exchanges between the two Koreas, because it does not involve, it's a little different from culture and sports or direct political or military exchanges?
I think that is kind of more like a basic humanitarian issues. Again, today's Panmunjom Declaration include very important elements of humanitarian parts. One is that they two sides agreed to have permanent places for the family reunion, which has been rejected by North Korea for a fairly long time, since South Korean government proposed the idea of establishing the permanent family reunion site. But this time, North Korea finally agreed to South Korean government's proposal that they are going to establish the permanent family reunion site. And also, they agreed to have for the remains in in the DMZ area because DMZ area has not been really touched by two sides, and the access is pretty much limited. And as you said, that DMZ area is where that the final and most fierce battle was done at the end of Korean War in 1953. So there has been a lot of remains left over there without two sides ever put any efforts to get back in. So I think that those kinds of agreements, even though it will eventually help in our society, but I think having an agreement on that side itself is very substantive and meaningful.
Of course, we won't see drastic changes overnight, although there were mentions of removal of GPs on a trial basis. What are your thoughts on that?
So there are going to be steps to be taken on those issues because that even though two Koreas have signed the agreement today and they agreed to move toward the denuclearization of Korean Peninsula and decide to remove all the hostile acts between two sides. But as you mentioned, that signing the paper does not mean that we achieved that. So those who care for the security policies and the military policies always think of the worst case of scenarios. So removing those GPs and setting up and expansion of no-fly zone, all the security person naturally have concerns of the negative effect of establishing those things. So I hope that today's decision about military side will eventually help the relations between two Koreas. And as our government official said, that this kind of measures will eventually lead to the peaceful denuclearization of North Korea.
There seems to be notion from a certain parts of the world that it's just sanctions and pressure that led to this outcome. But we believe that's just a part of the story, right?
Yes. Earlier this year, then when North Korean leader Kim Jongun decided to send a delegation to Pyeongchang Winter Olympic Games and decide to have a meeting with the South Korean envoy in Pyongyang and decide to have a summit with the President Moon Jae-in in April and ultimately decide to have a talk with the President Trump. Many people believe that it is because of the pressure put on North Korea in the economic side. However, after July, as North Korea's attitude has been changed, and so sanction itself is not the only answer to explain North Korea's changing behavior. So that is why there's a role that South Korean government can play. If it is only for the international sanctions, there's literally no role for South Korean government for play. And I guess that the trust built by President Moon and the Chairman Kim over several months this year actually have a great impact on the outcome today.
With that in mind, would the international community try to consider the option of lifting some sanctions to enable greater economic cooperation between the two Koreas?
Persuade international community that now it is time for lifting sanctions to lead North Korea in a more positive way. I think we need more evidences that this is going to work. However, so far, even though we have signed the agreement with North Korea today, but not much has really been really tested on this side. So that is why international community, including the United States, still argue that we need to put more pressure until we see some tangible evidences that North Korea is really strategically changing.
They seem focused on one direction, and they seem reluctant to consider other options at this point. Not exactly great listeners for now. Minji, going back to you, there were some interesting developments in terms of North Korean leader Kim Jong-un's next move, his next destination for a visit, possibly, and also a quick response from President Donald Trump after the summit results were announced.
That's right. U.S. President Donald Trump was quick to comment. He left a tweet saying that it was very exciting and that he welcomed the agreement that was achieved here. What experts and foreign media have pointed out was whether the U.S. would be satisfied with this agreement. Now, some experts in Korea have said that it's very difficult for Korea to reach an agreement, some sort of agreement on denuclearization, because the key players involved are actually North Korea and the U.S., so it's something that they will have to get down to at the end of the day. And because the U.S. has been demanding that North Korea submit its list of nuclear weapons and facilities that it may have, they see this as rather North Korea making a counter-proposal by saying if the U.S. makes corresponding measures that it's willing to shut down its Yongbyon nuclear facility test site.
Right. In terms of the measures that North Korea is taking, they have been taking steps gradually and from their perspective, very bold gestures as well. It seems rather lukewarm, though, the response coming from the international community. Is it perhaps because they've grown too numb to the old ways of North Korea, pretending to, or trying, at least admitting that they're trying to do something different, and then suddenly going back to their old ways?
Perhaps that could be so. Like the international media were raising their doubts whether North Korea was really committed to denuclearization, given that some reports showed that it's still working on its nuclear facilities and there's still movements going on regards nuclear development. Japanese media, Chinese media have all responded to this, but they're saying that there needs to be more substantial effort on this part to denuclearization. And because it does not include the submitting of a list, it's too early to predict whether this is really making progress towards denuclearization. Some have said that the proposals that he's made so far today, like the Dongchangli site, the pad, these are things that the U.S. probably already knows. It wouldn't come as a big surprise to the U.S. at this point.
So I guess what's interesting is the last statement that North Korea made, that they're willing to do something about Yongbyon as well, pending discussions or some return response from the U.S.
So we have to look the sentence very carefully, that North Korea did not agree to remove Yongbyon facility if the United States is giving something toward North Korea. So North Korea has been arguing that North Korea already took measures, initial measures, to show that they are sincere in denuclearization. So what they have said is that they already got rid of Punggye nuclear test site, and they also mentioned that they already shut down that Dongchangli missile engine test site. And when our special envoy visited Pyongyang again in September 5th, that our National Security Council advisor briefed to the Korean public that Kim Jongun, Chairman Kim, said his frustration that after he took all those initial measures, closing the Punggye and shutting down the Dongchangli, international community is not really acknowledging it. So now the question is that whether North Korea is really trying to link the end of the declaration to end the war with the real thing that U.S. wants, which is the declaration of the nuclear list. That means that I believe that so far North Korea has never really said that what they want, what they are going to do in return for the declaration to end the war, because North Korea has been insisting that declaration to end the war should be offered because they already took those measures, and that's what President Trump promised during the Singapore summit. So if U.S. is agreeing to offer a declaration to end the war first, then probably they would consider taking measure of removing the Yongbyon facility and others. So I think that it's It's a little bit different from what South Korean government proposed, because South Korean government so far proposed that we can exchange declaration to end the war with the submitting of the declaration of the nuclear list, but apparently North Korea is not exchanging those two things. So North Korea is now showing their preference that they are willing to exchange the declaration to end the war with the Yongbyon facility. That is why the US media and other people saying that it's less satisfactory to the United States.
Right, there seemed to have quite a distance between them. US saying no report until everything is complete, and North Korea saying show us something that we can find some encouragement to continue to go on this path. Now, Mijie, I believe we're going to play some footage that we've had from earlier today, right now.
That's right. I think we're going to hear the remarks that President Moon made earlier in the day before the summit, perhaps.
판문점에서 탄생한 4.27 선언에 받들려 북남 관계가 역사적 전환의 첫 자옥을 띄웠다면 9월 평양 공동선언은 관계 개선의 더 높은 단계를 열어놓고 조선 반도를 공고한 평화 안전지대로 만들며 평화 번영의 시대를 보다 앞당겨 오게 될 것입니다. 수십 년 세월 지속되어 온 처절하고 비극적인 대결과 적대의 역사를 끝장내기 위한 군사 분야 합의서를 채택하였으며 조선 반도를 핵무기도 핵 위협도 없는 평화의 땅으로 만들기 위해 적극 노력해 나가기로 확약하였습니다. 나는 문재인 대통령에게 가까운 시일 안에 서울을 방문할 것을 약속했습니다. 우리는 분단의 비극을 한시라도 빨리 끝장내고 결의의 가슴 속에 쌓인 분열의 한과 상처를 조금이나마 가실 수 있게 하기 위하여 평화와 번영으로 나가는 성스러운 여정에 언제나 지금처럼 두 손을 굳게 잡고 앞장에 서서 함께해 나갈 것입니다.
북녘 동포 여러분, 남녘의 국민 여러분, 해외 동포 여러분, 전쟁 없는 한반도가 시작되었습니다. 남과 북은 오늘 한반도 전 지역에서 전쟁을 일으킬 수 있는 모든 위험을 없애기로 합의했습니다. 북측은 동창리 엔진 시험장과 미사일 발사대를 유관국의 전문가들의 참여하에 영구적으로 폐쇄하기로 했습니다. 또한 미국의 상응 조치에 따라 영변 핵시설의 영구 폐기와 같은 추가적 조치도 취해 나가기로 했습니다. 한반도 환경협력과 전염성 질병의 유입과 확산을 막기 위한 보건의료 분야의 협력은 즉시 추진될 수 있을 것입니다. 금강산 이산가족 상설면회소 복구와 서신왕래, 화산상봉은 우선적으로 실현해 나갈 것입니다. 2032년 하계올림픽의
A lot of details there, including not just a reunion of separated families, but the ways to keep it going to provide a lot more hope and opportunities for the war-torn family members, that they could exchange letters or exchange video letters or perhaps even Skype with each other and hold more meetings, and even a special committee dedicated to ensuring that communication towards making sure such interactions continue. That's very important. And medical exchanges, that's also something that wasn't really covered in the past.
That's right. So they have many new agreements. They have said that they are going to actively promote exchanges and cooperation in various fields so that it enhances the atmosphere of reconciliation and unity, and that it demonstrates the spirit of the Korean nation both internally and externally.
Right, perhaps the forestation efforts in North Korea could help with the fine dust issues that we are experienced with every now and then here in the South. What was most interesting, I think, to many people who are listening, whether they are familiar with the situation in inter-Korean relations or not, is the fact that the leader of the reclusive state mentioned that he might visit Seoul. What's your take on that, Dr. Wu?
So in the past, Kim Jong-un's father, late Kim Jong-il, already mentioned that he also would like to visit Seoul in return for our present visit to Pyongyang. But it really didn't happen at that time because of a lot of issues involved, like escorting him, and there are a lot of antipathies in South Korea still against him. But probably they believe that now is a time for him to come to Seoul without concerning any other issues. So I think that though President Moon already offered an invitation to Chairman Kim to Seoul earlier this year, however, I think that today's agreement made them to believe that there's going to be a progress in denuclearization front with the United States. So with the possible positive outcome from the second talks between President Trump and Chairman Kim, I think they are going to make much more amiable environment for him to come to Seoul. That is why they include the sentence that Chairman Kim is going to visit Seoul.
Right, it's perhaps a show of confidence of the talks to come and the developments to come between the two Koreas on the part of Kim Jong-un. He does seem to enjoy making bold gestures, what we've seen in the past, and he seems to continue doing that still. I guess this means that there's going to be even higher expectations for the talks between Pyongyang and in the U.S.
So there was a concern when Secretary Pompeo canceled his most recent visit, and President Trump also mentioned that if there was no hope for the progress, Secretary Pompeo didn't have to go. But even in those cases, President Trump did not really criticize North Korean leader, because he still opened the door for the talks with Chairman Kim. And Chairman Kim and North Korea a couple times criticized the U.S. government, but they really didn't criticize President Trump. I think both sides acknowledged that criticizing a leader would shut the door to each other. So that is why they opened the door. So I guess that today there was expectations that there would be some sentences in the agreement that will facilitate the talks between the United States and North Korea. So that sentence should be related to the denuclearization issues of North Korea. So there was an expectation that North Korean leader might offer something in return for declaration to end the war. And now we know that North Korean leader agreed to South Korean president that he's willing to exchange removal of Yongbyon with a declaration to end the war. And maybe the people like security experts and the government people in Washington might not have really positive response to this proposal. But I believe that President Trump, this is like enough proposal to him to accept the second summit between him and Chairman Kim. So I think that the prospect for the second meeting between Trump and Kim is much higher than before now, with the agreement made today with regard to the denuclearization.
Right, turning back to you, Minji, some of the projects that we are very focused on and very excited about are the connection and the renewal or construction of new roads or railways. Other than the symbolic meaning of such steps forward, what can you tell us about these collaborative projects?
Yes, so ever since the April Panmunjom agreement, they have been stepping up talks between the two sides in various aspects, which include forestry, railroad connections, and things like this. But because of the UN sanctions, we haven't been able to make much progress on these areas. But today they agreed that they will make some progress again. They will restart progress, and some of them include a groundbreaking ceremony within this year for the East Coast on the West Coast rail and road connections between the two sides. And they also agreed, if conditions ripe, they will also normalize the Kaesong Industrial Complex and the Mount Kumgang Tourism Project as well. And they will also discuss the issue of forming a West Coast Joint Special Economic Zone and an East Coast Joint Special Tourism Zone as well. And this also includes South and North environment cooperation so as to protect and restore the natural ecology. And this is a step to endeavor and achieve substantial results in the current ongoing forestry cooperation.
Right, Minji. Let's stay with that topic for a while. There, a key agreement outlined in the joint declaration is economic cooperation. Of course, they will first need relief from sanctions. Our Kim Hye-sung explains further what the two sides plan to prepare until that time comes.
The two Koreas have agreed to boost economic exchanges on the basis of co-prosperity and take substantive measures to develop the economy. First, the two leaders agreed to hold a groundbreaking ceremony linking rail and roads along the east and west coast within this year and discuss the possibility of creating special economic and tourism zones along the coasts. Already, the two Koreas have conducted joint inspections on the railroads in July, as outlined in the Panmunjom Declaration last April. Second, there are plans to reopen the Kaesong Industrial Complex, a symbol of cross-border economic cooperation which opened in 2004 but has been shut down since 2016 amid heightened tensions on the Korean peninsula following North Korea's nuclear test.
환경이 조성되는 대로 개성공단과 금강산 관광 사업의 정상화도 이루어질 것입니다.
When conditions are ready, as economic ventures or investment in the North would require the lifting of UN sanctions on North Korea. In addition, the two Koreas have agreed to push for cooperation in environmental protection like forestry restoration and healthcare and medical services. Kim Hye-sung, Arirang News.
The defense chiefs of the two Koreas also signed a comprehensive military agreement. It's looked to help significantly reduce tensions and build trust. Park Ji-won outlines what the contents are.
South Korea's Minister of National Defense Song Yang-moo and his North Korean counterpart No Kwang-chol signed a comprehensive military agreement Wednesday with South Korean President Moon Jae-in and North Korean leader Kim Jongun present at the scene. The military agreement states various specific details to realize the goal of ceasing hostile acts against each other and building mutual trust. First, both sides agreed to cease military exercises along the military demarcation line from November 1st this year. Specifically, all live-fire artillery drills and field training exercises at the regiment level and above will be ceased within 5 kilometers of the MDL. Both sides also agreed to designate no-fly zones for all aircraft above the MDL area from November 1st. Also aiming to prevent any accidental military clashes on land, air, or sea, the two Koreas agreed on specific step-by-step procedures and aimed to solve all military issues through peaceful consultations and maintaining permanent communication channels. Secondly, South and North Korea agreed on specific measures to transform the DMZ area into a peace zone. The two sides agreed to remove 11 guard posts each, altogether 22 located within 1 kilometer of each other by the end of this year as a preliminary measure to eventually removing all guard posts within the DMZ. They also agreed to demilitarize the joint security area, and the South, the North, and the United Nations Command will remove all mines in the JSA in Panmunjom within 20 days starting October 1st. The two sides also said they will jointly recover war remains within the DMZ as a pilot program, with those operations taking place from April to October next year. Thirdly, South and North Korea agreed to turn the area around the Northern Lemon Line and the West Sea, a de facto maritime border, into a peace zone to avoid accidental clashes. The two sides will also establish a joint fishing zone in the area as a pilot program. Lastly, the two Koreas agreed to continue consultations on various military issues for mutual military confidence building. Wednesday's comprehensive agreement came after a series of military talks between generals and colonels of the two Koreas over the past months to realize the historic Panmunjom Declaration, where the two Koreas agreed to cease all hostile acts against each other and reduce military tensions. Park Ji-won, Arirang News.
Let's take an even closer look into the agreements the leaders of South and North Korea have signed and announced at the Pyeongyang summit. Our Park Ki-jun explains in detail what progress was made on the denuclearization front.
South and North Korea have agreed to achieve a nuclear-free Korean peninsula.
조선 반도를 핵무기도 핵 위협도 없는 평화의 땅으로 만들기 위해 적극 노력해 나가기로 확약하였습니다.
And that agreement comes with some concrete measures.
북측은 동창리 엔진 시험장과 미사일 발사대를 유관국의 전문가들의 참여하에 영구적으로 폐쇄하기로 했습니다. 또한 미국의 상응 조치에 따라 영변 핵시설의 영구 폐기와 같은 추가적 조치도 취해 나가기로 했습니다.
It's the first time for the nuclear issue to even be discussed as an official agenda at the Inter-Korean summit, let alone for detailed measures to come out of the talks. President Moon credited Kim for keeping his promises made with U.S. President Donald Trump at the first ever North Korea-U.S. summit in Singapore. The promises being no more nuclear or missile tests. The South Korean president also called for progress in North Korea-U.S. negotiations, particularly by continuing to exchange letters. The two Koreas will continue cooperating closely with the U.S. and the rest of the international community to achieve the common goal of denuclearization. And with that, he says the two Koreas are not far from reaching their final destination of building peace on the peninsula that's without nuclear weapons or nuclear threats. Park Hee-jun, Arirang News.
The news of what was discussed in Pyongyang was not only of interest to Koreans, it was receiving attention from all across the world. Our Hong Yoo zooms in on how the global media covered the joint agreement.
The world's media were all interested in what the leaders of the two Koreas had to say. Soon after the leaders announced the details of their agreement, U.S. President Donald Trump tweeted about their announcement. He said that Kim Jong-un has agreed to allow nuclear inspections subject to final negotiations and to permanently dismantle a test site and launch pad in the presence of international experts. In the meantime, there will be no rocket or nuclear testing. Hero remains to continue being returned home to the United States. Also, North and South Korea will file a joint bid to host the 2032 Olympics. Very exciting. British newspaper The Guardian reported that North Korea had agreed to shut down its missile test sites. It emphasized that Moon Jae-in said the two leaders have agreed to steps that will lead to a nuclear-free peninsula. Japanese newspaper Asahi Shimbun also focused its report on North Korea agreeing to invite foreign experts to verify its permanent scrapping of its missile sites. It also highlighted the importance of this summit, saying, more than in their previous encounters, when the mere fact of meeting and resuming a dialogue was seen as a major step forward, Moon is under pressure to leave Thursday with some concrete accomplishments. CNN reported that South and North Korea have committed to an era of no war, taking a step closer to peace by signing a joint military agreement that removes the threat of conflict on the peninsula. The joint military agreement was signed right after the Pyongyang joint agreement. Most foreign media highlighted the fact that North Korea has agreed to shut down its missile test sites, since progress towards denuclearizing North Korea is what the rest of the world is most interested in.
I believe this is the Ningla May Day Stadium, with the two leaders stepping in with children dressed in a hanbok.
That's right. This is where they will be watching the Brilliant Fatherland, which is a controversial mass gymnastics performance. Now, we heard South Korea's presidential office say that the content and the title may be changed a little bit so that it does not disturb the South Korean delegation.
Fireworks there. It's a lot more brightly lit and a lot less physical gymnastics involved possibly this time around. We did see a lot more tech-savvy programs displayed when this program was initially unveiled for the first time after being selected as a new program to replace the previous version, which is titled Arirang.
Yes, it was titled Arirang. This one, it was made to celebrate the 70th anniversary of the North's founding, which was the 9th of September. So just about 10 days ago. So here, the live footage that we'll be getting won't be of the actual performance, but here President Moon Jae-in will be making a short speech. He will be delivering a speech to some 150,000 people present here. We're not sure if it's going to take place before the performance or after the performance, but considering that we're getting the footage right now, it seems that he may make a speech before it. Now, back in 2007, then President Roh Moo-hyun watched the Arirang mass gymnastics, which you said earlier, but this kind of drew domestic criticism because of the propaganda measures. So the presidential office said the contents could be edited, so because we've seen this in the past.
Right, but we've already seen a heavily edited version, which is the new program. It seemed to have a lot less, if not zero, negative messages to the outside world, namely to the United States or to South Korea, and it even featured President Moon Jae-in as one of the backdrops. Right, we are hoping to see more exciting detailed footage from North Korea, but unfortunately, that's all we have at this point. It's very enticing, and we do look forward to finding out more about what exciting programs they have and what kind of speech President Moon Jae-in has prepared. How do you anticipate President Moon Jae-in will address the audience there this time, judging by the fact that, as Min-ji mentioned, this could be perceived as a controversial stage?
So actually, there are so many first things that the President Moon has done in this his visit to Pyongyang, and this might be the first time in the history that Korean president addressed North Korean citizen, and I think that probably he's not going to make speeches disturbing North Korean citizens, but probably he's going to emphasize that this is how our nations are going, and this is how our nations can unite together to improve our future. So I think that it is mostly about our nation and the people, and not much about the politics and other things. So I hope it's going to be pretty much constructive message delivered by our president directly to the North Korean citizens this time.
Right. What are some of the possible factors that may have caused this delay, Min-ji?
Well, previously, before this, we believe that he was dining at the Pyeongyang Taedonggang seafood restaurant. President Moon had made a request that he wanted to have his banquet at a place where it's visited by the average North Korean citizens. So this place was selected, the Taedonggang seafood restaurant. It finished construction this July, so it's relatively new, and it's actually a ship-shaped building that along the Taedonggang. And here they said you can also get a view of the Taedonggang River and also the May Day Stadium where this mass performance is taking place. So North Korea has actually been very proud of the seafood restaurant. We've heard that Kim Jong-un made the name himself. He's made inspections, and they said they wanted to, ahead of the opening, Kim Jong-un visited himself with his wife, Lee Seol-ju, and they said they want to make another landmark restaurant that represents Pyongyang, like the Ongryugan, which serves naengmyeon.
Right, a lot of emphasis on economic progress, whether it's a brand new seafood restaurant or high-rise buildings, 70-story buildings included, and of course a more tech-heavy performance for the traditional mass games. All right, Min-ji, thank you so much for being here with us through the day, and of course, Dr. Lu Jong Hyun, thank you again for providing us with valuable insights at this hour.
It was my pleasure.
Thank you. That looks like this is time for us to wrap things up. Thank you so much for staying with us. Do tune in again at 10 p.m. Korea time for our continued coverage of the Inter-Korean Summit in Pyongyang.